drag racing. This is Diddy Kong racing. The rough riding, balloon grabbing, coin snatching, boss beating, rumble pack ready racing adventure that's definitely off track. For 1 to 4 players. Only on N64.
Hello everyone, Alec Elger the SideQuest Gamer here, and today we are taking a look at the classic Nintendo 64 title, Diddy Kong Racing. Perhaps you've heard of it, as it is one of the most beloved games made by Rareware. But does it still hold up? Well, let's take a look. Diddy Kong Racing, the very first Nintendo 64 game I've ever played in my life, on the first console my family ever owned, and is one of the most beloved titles released for the console. I loved this game as a kid, and because I've played it over and over as a kid, therefore it's perfect and flawless in every possible way. Just kidding. I mean, it is a great game, but it's not perfect. Let me elaborate. Diddy Kong Racing is unique for a few reasons. A, it stars a sidekick and a bunch of other characters you've never heard of at the time. B, 2 of those other characters, Banjo and Conker, later star in their own games. C, this game is a Mario Kart clone of sorts, but in a collectathon adventure style with even its own unique hub world. And D, you not only ride karts, you can also choose to race in hovercrafts and planes too. Diddy Kong Racing was a racing game developed by Rare and released for the Nintendo 64 in November of 1997 in all 3 regions. 11 months after Nintendo released Mario Kart 64 for the same console, but it wasn't originally planned to be a racing game. Early in development, it was first thought to be a real-time strategy game with a time travel prehistoric theme, but then Rare wanted an adventure element in the game with racing, and went through several names like WoW, Cartoon Kingdom, and then Adventure Racers. In June of 1997, this game was established as Pro-Am 64, which would be a 3D sequel to the NES RC Pro-Am racing games, and it would star Timber the Tiger, but Shigeru Miyamoto from Nintendo offered Diddy Kong from the Donkey Kong franchise to be in the game, which Rare was hesitant to have in the game at first, but they went with it and even went as far as to change the title to Diddy Kong Racing. Yet, for a game called Diddy Kong Racing, Diddy's guest appearance is pretty downplayed in this game. I mean, I'm not expecting a parade or anything with his face all over the game, but I don't know, every time I hear this...
Diddy Kong Racing! Press start!
I'm then reminded, oh right, he's in this game. The story in this game is practically non-existent. Basically, Timber the Tiger is in charge of the island since his parents are away on vacation or something, but is allowed to have his friends over to race in it. Then this alien named Wizpig basically wants to take over this island, and the only way to defeat him is to beat him in a race. But you have to work your way up by beating other racers in order to challenge him. The method of progression works something like this. Most of the doors to the racetracks require a certain number of balloons in order to access them, kind of like in Super Mario 64 on how certain doors require a certain number of power stars. But anyways, some of the balloons you can find in the hub world, and 3 can even be acquired by accepting Taj's vehicle challenges, where you race him in a car track, hovercraft track, and the hardest being the plane track. But the others require you to actually beat all the racetracks in first place, and all the silver coin challenges in first place. Basically, in one of the several worlds in this game, there are 4 racetracks. Beat all of them in first place, you get to challenge the boss racer. Then you do the more challenging silver coin challenges, where you replay the same tracks but have to collect 8 silver coins, as well as beat the track in first place with all the coins in hand. Once you beat those challenges, you then re-challenge a harder version of that boss racer in order to gain one of the 4 pieces of the Wizpig medallion. All 4 pieces are needed in order to challenge the game's final boss, being Wizpig, of course. But that's not all the game has, as there are also hidden keys you find in one level per world to unlock that world's minigame, which houses one of the 4 pieces of the TT medallion. And each world has a Mario Kart-esque Grand Prix where you race all 4 tracks of that world in order to gain the golden trophy. Once you have all 4 trophies and have beaten that game's final boss racer being Whizpig, then head off to the sign at the beach and you'll unlock the final worlds, which I won't spoil for you, but... Now as for the track designs, I do find them to be even more unique than even Mario Kart 64's tracks, as they do represent their themes very well, whether it be beach, snow, medieval, or prehistoric themed. The only tracks I didn't care for were the Future Funland tracks, not because they weren't bad or anything, but to me, they just were uninteresting in terms of aesthetics and even track design. I was just not a big fan of all the caves and the sharp turns. My favorite world is either Sherbert Island or Snowflake Mountain. I just love their aesthetic appeal as well as the imagination that went into the track designs. Like Snowball Valley, for example, has 2 pathways in the beginning, and in one of them, you're actually in a tunnel made of ice. It's just the little things like that that just make it interesting. But as for how the tracks are implemented for the multiple vehicles offered in this game, well, some tracks allow you to ride more than one vehicle, each with their strengths and weaknesses, but I always felt that the hovercraft was a little clunky and the plane steering is stiff unless you hold the R drift button the whole time. The cars themselves are pretty solid, and I feel they control slightly smoother than even the cars in Mario Kart 64, but overall, the vehicles are not that bad. However, the hovercraft and plane have a learning curve that takes some getting used to. Now, like Mario Kart 64, this game has power-ups. The balloons have projectile missiles, the green balloons have traps you can leave behind, the yellow balloons have defense shields, the rainbow balloons have magnets, and the blue balloons have speed boosts. If you hit a balloon, you hold a power-up, but if you hit another balloon of the same color while holding that power-up, it will upgrade, and hit another balloon of the same color after that, you get a maximum upgrade to that power-up. You guys following me? Okay. But hit a different colored balloon while holding a power-up, it will change to that color's corresponding low-tier power-up. This is a kind of a neat game mechanic that encourages you to use these power-ups at the right moment. Do you really want to use that low-level speed boost now in this congested area, or save it for a faster speed boost balloon for a more open area? It's your choice. This game is graphically pretty good. The levels are bright and colorful, and the racers, while kind of frozen in their cars, seem detailed enough in a cartoonish sense. While you can tell it's on a Nintendo 64, I think the graphics hold up pretty well. This is one of those better looking games on the console, and definitely impressive for 1997 standards. Well, console standards. The music is very good. It was composed by the legendary David Wise, who previously worked on the soundtrack for the Donkey Kong Country games and Battletoads for the NES, which I neglected to mention in my Battletoads review. Sorry. But the music, while not as great as the Donkey Kong Country 2 soundtrack or even the first Donkey Kong Country soundtrack, it's still very upbeat and it gets me in the mood to race in these imaginative tracks. My favorite track is probably Pirate Lagoon. But how's this game overall? Well, it's great, but not excellent. I did say in my Q&A video that Mario Kart 64 is overrated, but so could this game to a degree as much as I love it. I will say that it is not the best racing game of all time, as games like Mario Kart Wii is objectively better in terms of track design, controls, multiplayer, and soundtrack. I know it isn't fair to hold an old game to the standards set by newer games, but in order to be the best game of all time, it has to be of all time. A game would have to not only set the standards, but also set the high standards of that genre. But overall, this game would get my rating of a 92 out of 100. It's still a great time, and it's unfortunate that due to the split with Nintendo and Rare, that a virtual console release would be impossible unless Rare re-released this game without Diddy Kong. Actually, that would be pretty cool, although the game is called Diddy Kong Racing. There is a DS remake that I haven't played yet, but it does have an intro cutscene as well as new gameplay additions like upgrading your vehicle, although due to the split with Rare, they had to remove Banjo and Conker, but oddly kept Tip Top the Turtle despite appearing in both Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. If Nintendo does release the DS remake on Virtual Console, I'd say get it, as the other people seem to like it, while those who played the original didn't like it for omitting certain features like the silver coin challenges. But if you're a collector for the Nintendo 64, this game should be around $12 to $15 for a loose cartridge, as of writing, which is $25 cheaper than getting a loose cartridge of its Mario Kart counterpart on the Nintendo 64. And that concludes this semi-marathon of games developed by Rare. I have to admit, they've made some really good games, and some average at best games, but we all remember their classics for a reason, because they had some innovative charm to it that still kind of holds up to this day. Even Battletoads still holds up very well. And although they're not the same company they once were, that still doesn't alter the contributions they've made to the gaming industry back then. And thanks to the digital market, we can re-experience these classics, unaltered, well, slightly altered for like compilations and all, but nothing too noticeable. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and remember to stay awesome.